Part two to this, I'm going to be able to share.
Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, White Psychopathology, Collective Psychosis, and Trauma in America, which recently ranked #1 in Amazon's new book collectives releases, and I'm pretty sure you can get it right there at the conference. Please do so. He's the author and executive producer of the docu-series Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, White Psychopathology, Collective Psychosis, and Trauma in America. Get on his email list. It's a 10-part video series, and he's the founder of Blackademics, a nonprofit organization that provides educational experiences and opportunities to educators, lawyers, healthcare professionals, and the larger population. So Dante is a historian, scholar, public speaker, thought leader, facilitator, and coach, and he has worked and consulted for more than 15 years as a human resource management professional. He's won multiple awards. In 2024, he was awarded the Higher Education Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Leadership Award by the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education. And I have had the great privilege and honor of co-leading with Dante over the last several years, and can say with all sincerity that I have never experienced anyone hold the container for a group like Dante does. And he allows the deepest and most courageous honesty in participants from all points on the racial spectrum. Dante honored me by asking me to write the foreword to his new book, and has honored me again by asking me to read it to you. So I will do so now and then turn it over to him. I am white. As I read Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness by Dante King, I come across terms such as white sociopath, malignant diabolical psychopathy, and white malignant narcissism. One may reasonably ask, how does that make you feel as a white person? And I can answer with sincerity that I feel recognition and relief. I even feel excited and empowered. Why? Recognition because Dante describes a racial orientation inculcated within me at an early age and continually reinforced throughout my life. Relieved because these words break white racial taboos and directly name white sociopathy. Excited because to receive a diagnosis is the first step toward a cure. I feel empowered because I can move past unproductive and self-serving feelings such as guilt and shame. I did not choose to be conditioned into this disorder. I would never have accepted had I been given that choice. Dante's analysis is not about me, but Dante's analysis is about me, but it isn't personal. That understanding is actually liberating as it frees me from defensiveness, hurt, anger, and denial. It renders my self-focus moot. I am left ready to challenge white sociopathy within myself, my fellow white people, and society as a whole. I've been involved in anti-racist education for over 2 decades, working both internally and externally to expose and challenge white supremacy. I could not have done that without deep mentorship from Black people and other people of color. That mentorship required me to break with my conditioning and see value in having relationships across race. As a white woman, I was not raised to know or love or see Dante King. What a tragic loss that would have been if I had not made the changes in my life that would bring us into relationship. Dante is among the most powerful teachers I have had the honor to learn from. I hold the deepest sense of awe for his brilliance, compassion, commitment, and courage. Dante does not tip around white fragility, bending over backwards so as not to upset our delicate sensibilities and set up our rage. Yet, as Marguerite Malloy testifies, Dante's directness exacts a very high toll. To be Black in the US is to carry a heavy allostatic load due to the chronic stress of white sociopathy. To be Black in the US and continually speak truth to power is to amplify that load, as well as to amplify the risk of violence. I implore my fellow white people to open your hearts, allow Dante's message in, and feel the urgency. As our country moves ever closer to renewed legal and social entrenchment of white supremacy, our humanity is at stake. We too have an investment in ending this devastating form of mental illness, which so profoundly limits our capacity for full and moral lives. To any of my Black brothers and sisters, I hope to remind you that regardless of the lies we keep repeating, you are not and have never been the problem. I thank you for your attention. I turn it over to my beloved brother, Dante.
It comes with a lot of criticism, antagonism, and vitriol. So thank you so much. I'm honored to be connected to you in a relationship and to be here. So it's been impressive upon me that we have 60 minutes, so I'm going to just jump right in. I want to make sure that people understand some of my focuses, and that will become clear as I move on or into my talk. But I am raising this morning, and really throughout my work holistically, the experiences of people who have been characterized as and or labeled as Black. And so that includes not only African people, African American people, the people who are Afro-Latino, who are Afro-Indigenous, such as my great-grandmother, and really speaking to people's experiences who have been racialized into the construct of being identified as Black, phenotypically, because they have melanin in their skin. Does that make sense? Yes. And so, even within the Latino or Latina or Latina construct, it's important to racialize within that construct because the experiences of Afro-Latinos is much different than the experiences of phenotypically white presenting Latinos. Does that make sense? Okay, do I have Afro-Latinos in the house? Okay, so we're going to get this started, and so I'm going to share with you, I'm going to use, to start, a conceptual framework by Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. I'm going to allow her to explain it to you, even though she's been there for a number of years. I'm going to feature an interview of this very brilliant Black woman giving an interview about her conceptual framework. She was actually fired from Howard University in the mid-1970s for this framework, and then we're going to work from it. So turn to the person next to you and say, he's going to share the framework.
He's going to share the framework.
And then we're going to work from it.
And then we're going to work from it.
Turn to your other neighbor and say, and we're going to learn from it.
And we're going to learn from it.
Okay. Compensation system, white supremacy being the compensation for white genetic recessivity. So I'm going to give some examples that really highlight this, and I'm going to start with the institution of religion. But let me go back because, let me just see, here we go. When we consider, for example, the intersection of, the influence that white supremacy has in all of these areas of our lives, I'm going to deal with initially the intersections of religion, war, of politics, legality, and also education and religion. Like this is all wrapped up in there. So, let me just go. Okay, how many of you are familiar with the American Toleration Act of 1649? Okay. Who would like to tell the audience what it said? Who raised their hand? Please stand up. Or someone, whoever stood up, or raised their hands, please stand up. No one. I'm doing this on purpose too, because I have white people that are like, oh yeah, I'm familiar with this, but then when you ask them to recite it, they can never tell you. So if you're sitting next to the white person that says, I've heard this before, point them out. So I can point them out so I can invite them to go in. Okay? So the American Toleration Act went like this. For as much as in a well-governed and Christian commonwealth, matters concerning religion and the honor of God ought to be in the first place to be taken into serious consideration and endeavored to be settled. Be it therefore ordained and enacted by the right honorable Caecilius Lord Baron of this province, with the advice and consent of the upper and lower house of this General Assembly, that whatsoever person or persons within this province and the islands thereunto belonging shall henceforth blaspheme God, that is, curse him, or shall deny our Savior Jesus Christ to be the Son of God, or shall deny the Holy Trinity, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost, or the Godhead of any of the said three persons of the Trinity, or the unity of the Godhead, or shall use or utter any reproachful speeches, words, or language concerning the Holy Trinity, or any of the said three persons thereof, shall be punished with death, and confiscation or forfeiture of all his or her lands and goods to the Lord Proprietary and his heirs. So if you reject Christianity, if you blaspheme God, if you say anything to go against Jesus, you will be murdered. Turn to your neighbor and say, you will be murdered. And all of your assets that you've worked for will be forfeited to the Lord Governor.
Forfeited to the Lord Governor.
How many of you will resist Christianity at this juncture in time? And please don't raise your hand, because most of you won't even go to a riot or a protest. So if you expect me to believe you, I don't. None of us would. So we have to understand that the weaponization of white religion, of European religion, and how it's been used as warfare, not just psychologically, but physically. I think it's very important, too, to understand in this, what I refer to as the conversion laws. I'll give an example of just one. This is 1667, and it says, whereas the doubts have risen, where the children that are slaves by birth, by the charity and piety of their owners, made partakers of the blessed sacrament of baptism, should by virtue of their baptism be made free. It is enacted and declared by this grand assembly and the authority thereof, that the conferring of baptism does not alter the condition of the person as to his bondage or freedom, that diverse masters free from this doubt may more carefully endeavor the propagation of Christianity by permitting children, those slaves, or those of greater growth capable to be admitted to that sacrament. So prior to this law, Christianity came with the benefit of freedom. And after this law, it did still for people who were considered free and European. But if you were enslaved, an indigenous person or an African person, that characteristic of freedom, no, is no longer there. So they went about baptizing indigenous people, converting African people, and they could baptize them, but what this law said is you will be baptized and made Christian, but you will not be free. Does that make sense? So how many of you understand that anti-blackness sits at the heart of white morality? Anti-blackness, say this with me, turn to your neighbor and say, anti-blackness sits at the heart of white morality. And I'm going to go to another, so this is the law that gave white Christians gave to other Christian folk. This is under the English, this is in Virginia, to be able to murder black people with impunity. And here's how it reads. It's called the Casual Killing Act. Turn to your neighbor and say, it's not malicious killing, it's casual killing. So this law says, whereas the only law in force for the punishment of refractory servants resisting their master, mistress, or overseer cannot be inflicted upon Negroes because black people are too stubborn, they need a stronger degree of force. Because as they are resisting rape, pedophilia, they're resisting their mother being raped, they're trying to fight for them, as they themselves are resisting from having their daughters, their 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old daughters be put out for prostitution, which is how the American empire gets built. As they start to resist that, we need a form of correction to be able to keep them in line. How many of you are tracking with me? Okay. So because of their stubbornness, you see the word obstinacy, many of them be suppressed by, they can't be suppressed by anything other than violent means, be it enacted and declared by this grand assembly if any slave resists his master or other by his master's order correcting him, and by the extremity of the correction, I have to memorize some of them, should happen to die, that his death shall not be accounted a felony, but the master or that other person appointed by the master, Dante King, what to think about and how to relate to and deal with Black people, it's also shaping the foundations of what becomes the Black community. Because how many of you know that we weren't Black? We were Ugandan, we were Nigerian, we were Arab, we weren't Black. And so the whole Black construct is one of terror and trauma. And so it said, since, you know, we're giving basically white people the benefit of the doubt, and the entire legal landscape in this culture, and institutional and cultural landscape, is all about giving white people the benefit of the doubt. So each one of these laws and everyone that follows subsequently assumes good intent. How many of you know that a Black person can never assume good intent of anyone? We have no allies here, and sometimes that even includes people that look like us, because they've been trained to adhere to a psychological framework, a cultural framework, a value system, a belief system that aligns themselves with whiteness. And so I have to understand and size up very quickly and accurately who in the room is doing their work, because even Black people cater to white comfort and seek validation from white people and other non-Black people, and they see a valuelessness when it comes to other Black people. So I have to stay away from those Blacks. Turn to your neighbor and say, you have to stay away from those Blacks. And don't get me wrong, I'm very clear, because I used to be one of them. And I'm in recovery, and I still struggle to could be or can be, but I'm working on myself. And so I'm inviting all of you, as I am too, to be on this journey of recovery from white supremacy. Recovery from anti-Blackness. So I'd like you to turn to your neighbor really briefly and just share. What's your initial reaction to some of the examples that I just shared? I'll give you 30 seconds each. Person, just one. A reaction? No one? Okay.
You are taking us to church. Synagogue. What am I missing? Temple. Mosque. You are bringing us knowledge to empower us and to help us believe and receive that we are connected to a feeling that we ain't crazy. Look here.
So one of the words that we used was the word intense. And I asked, well, why would you use that word? And then as they shared, what was coming up for me is I need to ground myself when once again I'm shown something that I was not allowed to see. And so as I begin to see these and continually unpack these moments, it's not about getting upset and angry anymore. I'm grounding down and I'm allowing myself to go on my journey of healing, because that is what I need. So thank you.
And I know what you said, I do want to say I am angry. Yes. And I will forever be angry, because not understanding this knowledge, I did feel crazy. But I also blamed my parents for things, I misdirected my discontent and my anger, because I didn't have this information. And so left without any context, I blame Black people for their misgivings, for not doing X, not doing Y, not doing Z. I had no reference. And once I was able to go on this research journey, then I'm going to invite you to go on with me, and also Dr. Ralph D'Angelo. We have a 16-week fellowship that we're doing together. But once I began my research journey about 20 years ago, it just traumatized me. I went through grief. I was very sad. I became depressed. I became suicidal at what I was finding out. And it allowed me to understand that there's not one African American person in this country, or Afro-Latino person, or person of African descent who has a lineage that dates back to the antebellum period, or any Black person even that has come since the end. Whatever result I see, whether they're economically deprived, whether they are on drugs, whether they have been abused or ravaged by the white supremacist system of criminality, it's not their fault. It's not their doing. I had to forgive every black person. And the reason I say that, if you were to join the fellowship, you will see, I'm sharing examples with you, but I have over 20,000 of these legal examples. 20,000. And when you do a chronological trek into the present, it becomes very clear the things that have been happening in this country for centuries. So, that said, I'm going to go to 1672. Turn to your neighbor and say 1672. 1672. And I'm not going to go through this all the way because it's pretty long. It says, for as much as it hath been manifested to this grand assembly that many Negroes have lately been and now are out in rebellion in sundry parts of this country, and that no means have yet been found for, I don't know what's going on, but for the apprehension and suppression of them, from whom many mischiefs of very dangerous consequence may arise to the country, if either other Negroes, Indians, or servants should happen to slide forth and join with them, for prevention of which be it enacted by the governor, council, and burgesses of this grand assembly, and by the authority thereof, that if any Negro, mulatto, Indian slave, or servant for life run away, and shall be pursued by the warrant or human cry, it shall and may be lawful for any person who shall endeavor to take them, upon the resistance of such Negro, mulatto, Indian slave, or servant for life, to kill or wound him or them so resisting. So turn to your neighbor and say, violence is an institution of white America. Genocide is an institution of white America. Turn to your other neighbor and say, what happens to a people?
What happens to a people?
When it is programmed into them, that they can murder willfully, without cause, but based on a presumption or assumption that they are in fear. What happens over time? How many of you see that the humanity and the emotionality, empathy, and compassion is being regulated out of white people? By show of hands. Okay. They also go further. And if it happened that such Negro, mulatto, Indian slave, or servant for life do die of any wound in such their resistance received, the master or owner of such shall receive satisfaction from the public. You're going to be paid by the public taxes. If your Negro or Indian slave or servant for life, mulatto, happens to be killed, turn to your neighbor and say, if you're white, turn to your neighbor and say, white person, you don't lose out. It's a win-win all the way around. So how many of you see the inhumanity of white capitalism? Okay. And then I'm going to nuance this just a little bit, but I'm going to go down to the bottom. And it is further enacted by the authority aforesaid that all such Negroes and slaves shall be valued at 4,500 pounds of tobacco and casks apiece, and Indians at 3,000 pounds of tobacco and casks apiece. Who is it worth more to kill? Turn to your neighbor and say, who is it worth more to kill? Ask them. Black people. And we're going to add into this, and it is further enacted that the neighboring Indians do and hereby are required and enjoined to seize and apprehend all runaways whatsoever that shall happen to come amongst them, and to bring them before some justice of the peace, who upon receipt of such servant, slave, or slaves from the Indians shall take unto the said Indians for a recompense 20 arms length of roanoke or the value thereof in goods as the Indians shall like of. So we're going to commission pretty much white presenting indigenous people, Indian people, and that becomes clear too because they begin to write this into the law, who they're talking about. So phenotypically, if you are a person of Indian descent or indigenous descent, and you look like you have African blood in you, they would call you mestizo, or they would identify you as black during this particular period. And so, phenotypically white-presenting indigenous people, we're commissioning you to go after and target phenotypically Afro-indigenous people, African people, and African black people who are here in the colony. How many of you get this? This is very nuanced, and it's important that we racialize always, understanding that racism in America is a color caste system. Turn to your neighbor and say, it is a color caste system. This is the Preventing Negro Insurrection Act. How many of you would be angry over the last 50, 60 years, leading up to 1680, if you were black, based on just a few examples I've shared with you? How many of you would be angry? And so black people start to organize, Angolans and others that they are bringing in from the western strip of Africa. And so they implement this Preventing Negro Insurrections Act. And here's what they say. Whereas the frequent meeting of considerable numbers of Negro slaves under pretense of feast and burial is judged a dangerous consequence. We don't want them eating breakfast, lunch, or dinner. We don't want them attending funerals because they are attempting to organize and resist. How many of you see this? Okay. Be it enacted by the King's most excellent majesty by and with the consent of the General Assembly, and it is hereby enacted by the authority aforesaid, that from and after the publication of this law, it shall not be lawful for any Negro or other slave. I'm going to repeat that. For any Negro. Turn to your neighbor and say, we are not just talking about.
We're not just talking about.
Those who were enslaved.
Those who were enslaved.
We are talking about.
We're talking about.
All Negroes.
All Negroes.
And so the institutionality, the cultural fabric, the cultural psychology, and the legality of America and all of its institutions are inherently anti-black. This has less to do with slavery and the institution of enslavement than it does anti-blackness. Does that make sense? Yes. And I'm going to break this down just a little bit more. So, be it enacted by the King's most excellent majesty by and with the consent of the General Assembly, and it is hereby enacted by the authority aforesaid, that from and after the publication of this law, it shall not be lawful for any Negro or other slave to carry or arm himself with any club, staff, gun, sword, or any other weapon of defense or offense, nor to go or depart from his master's ground without a certificate from his master, mistress, or overseer, and such permission not to be granted but upon particular and necessary occasion. So everywhere a black person goes, they have to be able to justify and explain and rationalize to a white person why they are there. And how many of us have to do that right now? And have, yes, even at this conference. I won't speak to it, but people ask me, are you okay? And it's not to be helpful. And every Negro or slave so offending, not having a certificate, as After said, shall be sent to the next constable, who is hereby enjoined and required to give the said Negro 20 lashes on his bare back, will lay on, and so sent home to his said master, mistress, or overseer. And it is further enacted by the authority aforesaid that any Negro or other slave shall presume or lift up his hand in opposition against any Christian in the European context, shall for every such offense, upon due proof made thereof by the oath of the party before a magistrate, having received 30 lashes on his bare back, will lay on. And so you can't even express your discontent as a black person, because whatever that white person thinks of you as an individual or the collective group, they can destroy you. They can have you murdered. And so this right here literally is speaking to black people that decided to push back or defend themselves. But right now, in this context today, I'm not safe if I go and work for an institution. Because I've got to deal with Susie, Katie, Karen, Becky policing me. I've got to deal with what Tom and Peter thinks about me and whether I'm adhering to the standards of white standards of professionalism. And so I suffer from, and we all do, experience and suffer from a chronic anxiety. Because black safety depends on the white mind, what any one person thinks about us at any given moment. And so we're never really in full relationship with you because we can't be fully honest honest with you. Because you don't need to take time to understand. The minute we express our discontent, we are problematic and difficult, and if he just would have said it with a little less emotion, then I could have heard him. I felt frightened. He didn't say that, but it felt like, I just felt like. And so you all have this chronic anxiety that you suffer from, and a lack of emotionality, and lack of compassion, and a lack of humanity, that you need to begin to engage if you want to be in true and real relationship with Black people. Because do not mistake our niceness as though we are in relationship with you. We fear you, and we are programmed to cater to your comfort. And so knowing that you can have us killed, you can destroy our livelihood at any time, we have to be pleasing to you. The Black people here are identifying and agreeing with everything that I'm saying. I want you to stand. So you can see I'm not just speaking for myself. I don't even know most of these people that are standing, and yet we have this shared experience. Thank y'all so much. I want you to know I love you and I see you, especially the Black women in this room, because you never have gotten the recognition and the appreciation that you deserve, and I honor you. And the Black men too, my Black males, my Black brothers, I love you, I see you, I understand the erosion of your humanity. Having to minimize yourself and make yourself small, not even being able to defend yourselves, your sons, daughters, nieces, and nephews. It's crazy. So I just want to say that. And I would not be standing here today had it not been for my mom, who I worship her when she was my first role model. And my dad, I love my dad too. And so it goes on saying, it is hereby further enacted by the authority that said that any Negro or other slave shall absent himself from his master's service and lie hid and lurking in obscure places, committing injury to the inhabitants, and shall resist any person or persons that shall by any lawful authority be employed to apprehend and take the said Negro. That then, in case of such resistance, it shall be lawful for such person or persons to kill the said Negro or slave so lying out and resisting, and that this law be once every 6 months published at the respective county courts and parish churches in this colony. And so guess what? Stand up for me, white people. Please stand up for me. I just want to share with you, in our service today, we have a new law that gives you the opportunity to ask for a certificate from every Black person that you see. You have the right to police and surveil them anytime you see fit. They have to justify and explain to you why they're at any given place at any given time. And if they raise their hand to defend themselves against you, or even if you just think it, if you presume that they might be or going to do something to you, you have the right to report them to the local authority and have them subjected to 30 lashes on their bare back and then sent home to their master. And if that's not enough, guess what additional privilege we're reporting to you today in this law? You get to have them murdered, or you can kill them yourselves with impunity. What great privilege. And so now, after this announcement, we're going to have communion, we're going to have some grape juice, and then we're going to pray, because God has given us this authority. How does that privilege feel?
Part of me has to die for me to say yes to that. What part of myself do I have to kill to say yes to that law? A part of me has to die.
Or you can have a seat. So in what ways is whiteness being defined? Because as you heard Dr. Press Weldon say, it's not defined genetically. It's not defined legally, scientifically. So in what ways are these laws shaping what it then means to become white?
Anti-Black.
Very pro-white, concerned with the lack of pigment, as a characteristic in those who have melanin. But then there's also a direct target of anti-blackness located here. So you have cultural and institutionalized sociopathy, which equals psychopathy. How many of you would agree with that? Short hands. Okay. I only have a few minutes left. Here's the Black Academics Boot Camp. If any of you are interested, I'll be in person for an entire day at Preservation Park in Oakland, California, and we'll be together all day, just there, going through an intense summit of this material and critically examining it. For those of you who want to sign up from the conference, we will give you $100 off. Just email my assistant, JJ, at DanteKing.com. Our email is JJ at DanteKing.com. If you would like to join the fellowship that spoke about that Dr. Robert D'Angelo and I are doing, that starts September, and it's every Wednesday, every other Wednesday on Zoom from 10 a.m. Pacific time to 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. And we go for 8 months, 16 weeks, every other week. If you register from the conference, again, I will offer you $1,500 off. Just email my assistant, JJ at DanteKing.com. So going back to this and looking at the color aspect, so how many of you see the preoccupation with color? Turn to them and say Negro, Negro, Negro. As white people begin, or Europeans begin to convert, indigenous and African people into Christianity, they have to transition from using the term Christian, because now multiple people are identified by that label outside of the European construct. To several people, or at least a few, that are here. Well, first of all, let me say this. I would not be here if it were not for this gentleman right here, by the name of Marcelo Walker. Please. And my other assistant, who just handles my whole life. I call her my second mortgagee after him. She's not here, but she's just incredible. I want to give some recognition to Dr. Marcus Campbell and Dr. Pat Savage, who are here. If we can give them a round of applause. I've been doing some incredible work with them, some deep work. And as well as Katie. Katie's here, and where's Kelly? I saw Kelly here too. If you both want to stay. Oh, here you go. These two white women took the fellowship. I think, Kelly, you took it once, and then you're back again. So she's taken it the second time, and we've just been building community and healing together, transforming together. So, thank you all. This is the South Carolina 1740 Negro Act, and this act says, Section 1 declares all Negroes of Indians to be slaves. Section 2. Under this provision, it has been uniformly held that color is prima facie evidence that the party bearing the color of a Negro, mulatto, or mestizo is a slave. But the same prima facie result does not follow for the Indian color. What does prima facie mean?
Face of the evidence.
So if we perceive you just based on visible, just on sight, visually, to be of the Indian color, you're not enslaved. How many of you understand that? But if you look like you phenotypically have any mixture of black or African blood, and we perceive you, you are enslaved. How many of you got that? How many see the object of color functioning in white people's compulsory obsession with it? Okay. So then we go to the 1790 Naturalization Act. And so this objectification of a color concept, white, turn to the white person next to you and say, you're not white. You're European. And you lack an ability to produce skin pigmentation as other groups do. Turn to your neighbor and you're not white. Get healed. Okay. So we're going to start a whole country, the United States of America, based on the predicate of whiteness. And so in 1790, the United States Congress passes this law, and it says, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America, of Congress assembled that any alien be a free white person who shall have resided within the limits and under the jurisdiction of the United States for the term of 2 years, may be admitted to become a citizen thereof. So whiteness is the main value system in America. That's how you get economics, access to opportunity through your citizenship. And so therefore, white institutions, this country, the legal system, the political system, all of our institutions function on the basis of white affirmative action and white sponsorship. There's a book called When Affirmative Action Was White, written by a Jewish guy by the name of Ira Katz Nelson. You should get it and read it. When Affirmative Action Was White, by Ira Katz Nelson. We then go on, so is this privilege or terrorism? Is it privilege or terrorism? I don't know, still no. You're not white, get healed, okay. So whiteness is psychological in nature. It's been infused into our legal system, all areas of our lives, and so has anti-blackness. And so anti-blackness is a white American legal, social, cultural, economic, institutional values and belief system. It involves the deprioritization of humans labeled as black people, as well as the criminalization, hyper-negativity, hyper-scrutiny, and negative positioning of black people and or blackness throughout all aspects of American society and life for the purpose of justifying and rationalizing political, social, cultural, economic debasement and inhumane treatment, ultimately genocide. So we are involved in a genocidal project where non-white people are concerned. How many of you see that being evidenced before you today? Okay. Anti-blackness includes, it can be a combination of texturism, featurism, colorism, and Eurocentric desirability versus undesirability based on European standards. And so some examples that I'll share with you briefly. How many questions? So President Thomas Jefferson, he said, I advance it therefore out of suspicion only that the blacks, whether originally a distinct race or made distinct by time and circumstances, are inferior to the whites in the endowments, both of body and mind. Deep-rooted prejudices entertained by the whites, 10,000 recollections by the blacks of the injuries they have sustained, new provocations, the real distinctions which nature has made and many other, they secrete less by the kidneys. So black people don't sweat as much, you don't secrete as much by the kidneys, and more by the glands of the skin, which gives them a very strong and disagreeable odor. So we smell bad, we're unattractive. How many of you see this? Okay. President Abraham Lincoln, he says, I will say then that I am not, nor ever have been in favor of bringing about in any way the social and political equality of the white and black races, that I am not, nor ever have been in favor of making voters or jurors of Negroes, nor of qualifying them to hold office, nor to intermarry with white people. And I will say in addition to this, that there is a mythical difference between the white and black races, which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality. And inasmuch as they cannot so live while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior, and I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. How many of you are seeing more and more white people's obsession with whiteness? By show of hands. Turn to your neighbor. This is not about being American. This is about being white American. So, President Andrew Johnson, Lincoln's successor, once Lincoln was assassinated, he said the blacks are given the right to vote. That would place every splay-footed, bandy-shaped, humpback, thick-lipped, flat-nosed, woolly-headed, ebon-colored Negro in the country upon an equality with the poor white man. As long as I am president, this will be a country for white men and a government for white men. So we go, Albert Einstein, he said that racism is a disease of white people in 1946. White malignant narcissism, extreme arrogance and self-centeredness, disregards feelings and needs of others, manipulates, uses, and exploits others for personal gain or pleasure. possesses an extreme need for power, exacts revenge against others upon critique, fantasizes about ways to gain more power or dominance over others, lacks conscience, regret, or remorse for actions and behaviors, delights in acts of cruelty and pain of others, directs high levels of aggression at other people, exhibits paranoia and distrust of others. I was going to get into, if I had time, the ways in which academic institutions were used to create scientific philosophies to define Black people as inferior. And so if you study the field of psychiatry, white psychiatry, you understand that all of the behavioral determinations that have been made are all made up by white people. And they use their own cultural, psychological orientations to try and define and determine what human behavior should look like for all human beings on the earth. How many of you understand the degrees of narcissism contained in that particular functionality? To think that you're able to define human behavior for every human being on the planet, not understanding their culture, the nuances of lineage of the culture, what people value, no consideration of it. Just use labels to diagnose people based on how you perceive them. Turn to your neighbor and say, it is psychotic. And so, that was University of Pennsylvania. I'm going to end with a quote. If I can get to it. These are rape laws that just only included white women, didn't include Black women. White men were not criminalized in most states for rape. Every prototype that they mentioned for rape in these laws has to do with a Black male. And I'll just share a few examples with you about this. This is Celia, who murdered her 65-year-old master Robert Newsom in 1855. And when the judge handed down the instructions for the jury, here's what the judge said. If Newsom was in the habit of having intercourse with the defendant, who was a slave, and went to her cabin on the night he was killed to have intercourse with her, or for any other purpose, and while standing, he was in the floor talking to her, she struck him with a stick, which was a dangerous weapon, and knocked him down, and struck him again after he fell, and killed him by either blow. It is murder in the first degree. So if he was in the habit of raping her, he should have just been able to do it. And it's murder in the first degree. How many of you understand the white psychology, the logic behind this? The standard of reasonableness. Thank you, Alan. So I'm gonna move on. The crime of rape does not exist in this state between African slaves. Our laws recognize no marital status as between slaves. Their sexual intercourse is left to be regulated by their owners. The regulations of law as to the white race on the subject of sexual intercourse do not and cannot, for obvious reasons, apply to slaves. Their intercourse is promiscuous, and the violation of a female slave by a male slave would be a mere assault and battery. So this is in and out of slavery. So when we go to Dorothy v. State, they said in the Georgia Supreme Court that Black men, if there's any evidence that says that this Black man did not intend to commit a rape, their Blackness will trump the evidence. How many of you understand that? This is 1899, so we're no longer talking about slavery. The Florida Supreme Court, Black women are immoral, so therefore they can't prove chastity. So they can't be raped. This is 1918. Alabama, 1953, Black men are just rapists. And it doesn't matter if there's any evidence to refute that idea. The evidence doesn't matter because their Blackness is what makes them rapists. And so therefore, how many understand the culture of white predation? And so rape and pedophilia are white American cultural institutions, white American moral institutions, white American legal institutions, white American political institutions, and white American economic institutions. So Dr. Bobby Wright, can I have 5 more minutes, please?
Yeah.
Can I get 5 more minutes? Look short. Okay, short. He's Jay the Stair. So in his seminal work, The Psychopathic Racial Personality, Dr. Wright analyzed the behavior of European Americans toward African Americans through the lens of psychopathy. He proposed that the historical and ongoing mistreatment of African Americans by European Americans is not simply a matter of prejudice or ignorance, but it is indicative of a deep-seated psychological condition. Key characteristics. Wright argued that the defining traits of the psychopathic racial personality include an absence of empathy, a disregard for the humanity of others, deceitfulness, and a persistent pattern of exploiting and oppressing African Americans. He believed that these traits are manifested in institutionalized racism, systemic violence, and cultural domination. So Dr. Bobby Wright writes in this pamphlet, in their relationship with the black race, whites are psychopaths, and their behavior represents an underlying biologically transmitted proclivity with roots deep in their evolutionary history. The psychopath is an individual who is constantly in conflict with other persons or groups. He is unable to experience guilt, is completely selfish and callous, and has a total disregard for the rights of others. One of the best methods that can be used to measure the psychopathic traits of the white race is observing and analyzing their universal overt behaviors and attitudes towards blacks. Psychopaths simply ignore the concept of right and wrong. By ignoring this trait in the white race, the lack of ethical and moral development, blacks have made and are still making a tragic mistake in basing the worldwide black liberation movement on moral suasion. It is pathological for blacks to keep attempting to use moral suasion on a people who have no morality, where race is the variable. I want to end with this though. Black and brown people, you have ingested this just as much as white people have. Because you strive in your quest for progress to be just like white people. And so this extends to you. You've been trained to be psychotic. You've been trained to be delusional. Because how many of you are hearing this history for the first time? So many of these examples, by show of hands. The specifics of it. I want you to stand. How many of you are hearing it for the first time? And I would venture to say everyone in this room is, in terms of the specific examples. I'm sure you can have my presentation. That means you've been living within a delusion. Because you've not known what has gotten you here to this moment. And so you've been living in a delusional state. And so if white people have been trained to be sociopathic and psychopathic where black people are concerned, that is true for you too. Because everything that they believe, you believe. Everything that they value in terms of their educational system, language, logic, all our cultural norms, standards, you brought into that too. So you have to do your own work and start your own journey. Thank you so much for having us. Dr. Amos Wilson told us, we have a school system that is based upon the psychology of white children and white people. If we are trying to educate our children in that system, they are bound to fail. The very structure of the educational system itself is based upon a white model, and therefore it has a built-in failure mechanism for black children, one way or the other. Dr. Bobby Wright told us, in their relationship with the black race, whites are psychopaths, and their behavior represents an underlying biologically transmitted proclivity with roots deep in their evolutionary history. The psychopath is an individual who is constantly in conflict with other persons or groups. He is unable to experience guilt, is completely selfish and callous, and has a total disregard for the rights of others. One of the best methods that can be used to measure the psychopathic traits of the white race is observing and analyzing their universal overt behaviors and attitudes towards black people. Psychopaths simply ignore the concept of right and wrong. By ignoring this trait in the white race, the lack of ethical and moral development, blacks have made and are still making a tragic mistake in basing the worldwide black liberation movement on moral suasion. It is pathological for Black people to keep attempting to use moral suasion on a people who have no morality, where race is the variable.
Acclaimed author Dante King invites you to purchase his book, Diagnosing Whiteness and Anti-Blackness, by going to his website, www.danteking.com, or Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and any other major book retailer